So I was having a cup of tea with a nice lady called Catherine the other day, and she was asking me, what's your big apricot system all about? So instead of emailing her, I thought I'd create a bit of audio and share it with the whole newsletter group. So, what is the big apricot all about? How does the system work, and how can it help your business? Well, let's start with something quite unexpected. Let's talk about a special type of tree called an apricot tree. Now, the apricot tree is a bit like an apricot tree. However, it's the smallest of apricot trees. In fact, it's so small it grows to only about 1.2 metres in about 10 years. However, it's quite a special little thing. Despite its size, it produces probably the tastiest and yummiest of all the apricot fruits you can find out there. Yep, this is all about something so small producing something really tasty, yummy and good. So that's really what my system does. It helps small businesses and startups make a surprisingly big impact way beyond their size, just like an apricot tree. So this is also why I call the system that I run the Big Small system. It's really based on the science of getting chosen. It's about why customers choose one brand over another. So the reason I specialise in this idea of the science of getting chosen is because of my 13 years working in marketing and working for over 150 large and small businesses, and also my experience in marketing science and consumer psychology. And what I've done is I've broken all this experience and knowledge down into five simple stages, or phases if you like, and I want to take you through which those are. The first stage is water, and this is all about your fuel. The second stage is all about the roots of your business, your customer route, your brand route, and your product route, which every business must have. And then the third stage is what we call the trunk of the business, which is really about having the solidity of a sales page or a store that people must go to for when you first start communicating with customers. And then the fourth stage is all about how you plan to communicate your content and your message and getting that right. And the fifth stage is actually pressing the go button, going live, and seeing what's worked and what hasn't. So simple 5 stages. Now I'm just going to talk you through each one of those. And the first one of those is in fact water. So let's talk about stage 1 and water. So imagine growing a tree that has no water. Water is in fact makes everything grow, whether it's an apricot tree to a business. So the water is a really, really important fuel for growth. And we need our own fuel when we start our own business, because it's what gets us out of bed early every morning. It makes us work really hard. However, lots of businesses don't really know where their fuel for why they do what they do is coming, where it's coming from rather. So what we need to do in this phase is we really need to tap into why are we in business? Why do we do what we do? And getting to that answer isn't necessarily easy. So we look into what annoys us about the way things that our competitors do things. What do we really want to change? Is it a personal reason? Like, I want to do less of the commute. That's definitely my reason, or one of my big reasons for setting up the Big Apricot. I don't want to commute to London the whole time. Is it about making millions of dollars or just a few thousand to get by? So not all of us want to be internet millionaires. Some of us are just happy with maybe 40, 50,000 pounds, which is certainly a reasonable amount to survive and enjoy life. But actually getting to this answer is quite hard. So we perform a bit of acupuncture. To use another analogy, we drill for oil, and then we know where our fuel is, where it's coming from. So this is really what stage 1 is all about: finding your water, finding your fuel, and really getting to the source of where it really comes from, because you need your fuel to grow your business. Well, once we've done this, we go into what's called stage 2. Now, stage 2 is what we call the roots phase. Now, imagine a tree that hasn't got any roots. Without it being rooted into the ground, it's all going to fall over. So that's what would happen to our apricot tree. And the same thing happens with our business. Without roots, our business is going to fall over. It's just going to blow away into the distance, and that's not a good thing. So that's what we call the second stage, the roots phase, because we're trying to establish our roots. In fact, 3 roots. These roots really do form the structure and the stability of our business. And these 3 roots are called the customer route, the brand route, and the product route. Now, the customer route is the very first place that we start, because without understanding what our customers' needs are, we're going to struggle. But you kind of already knew that, didn't you, as soon as I said that sentence? But really, how many of us actually research into our customers properly? And I mean really research into them. That's like getting to know them, going around and having a cup of tea with them, not just looking at some internet marketing research and think you know them. It's amazing how many clients that I've worked with just assume they know their customers without really knowing them and their specific problems, their specific needs and issues, and really helping them out in what you sell. But the way we get to this is we go through a number of stages. We start with sort of big, broad numbers like age, location, where they live, obviously, their gender, attitudes and behaviours. We get this really big picture. And then after that, we then narrow down to a few what we call more segments or groups of customers. So these might be defined by, teenagers. It could be an age thing. It could be psychographic groups. So, for example, people who love riding motorcycles. And once we've done this, we then focus it down in a little bit further, and we find not what's called a horrible persona. We in fact find a few people who represent ideally these little groups of people. And ideally I like to start with about 3 people. You can narrow it down to 5 if you like to, but we spend real time with them. We talk to them. We understand their problems in detail. And then after that, we tend to just pick one. And the reason we then pick one customer is because we want them to be sort of the customer that our business is built around. So I call this customer the extremely attractive customer, or the EAC. And the reason this customer is really important is, yes, it is because our business will focus around this person, but also because they represent not just that person themselves, but they represent all the hundreds and thousands of millions of customers that you want to attract who are just like them. And the cooler you can make them, and the cooler the customer is, the more forward-thinking they are, the more attractive they are, the better they are for your business. And the way to test this is simply by which customer excites you the most. Choose one of them, interview them, and you can use all their words in the sales copy, and you can make a product or a business all around them. Which leads us into our second route, which is the product route. So we've talked about the customer route, now we're talking about the product route. And this is where we really understand what our customer really needs in terms of what we can provide them with a business. So if a customer says they're really struggling to find dairy-free 90% cocoa chocolate, then maybe we can go make that. If it's about legal services without the killer fees, then go and create a service that addresses that. Your customer's going to have told you what they really need in a lot of detail if you've done your homework properly, not just relied on horrible spreadsheets that don't have a person in them, but you've actually gone and talked to them and spent time with them. And when you've got this, you've obviously got the start of a product. However, we don't just go and launch this product, we need an awful lot of feedback. And there are 3 sources of feedback that we can go to. If we launch the product without any feedback, that's an incredibly dangerous thing to do. So we can go back to our extremely attractive customer. We can go and talk to other customers we've spoken to. We can even go and ask lots and lots of people in terms of a survey about what they think about your product. And this is where we really need to shape or reshape our product based upon what they say. And customers aren't just the only route for expert feedback. Now, customers aren't the only route for feedback. In fact, there's another source called expert feedback. Now, experts are incredibly useful to have because they can see things that customers can't. They've had an awful lot of experience in the area of what you sell. So, for example, if you are selling 90% dairy-free cocoa bars or chocolate bars, you need to go and talk to an expert who works in that field and sold chocolate bars in the past, because they're going to be able to foresee all the troubles they've had in the past, and you're going to be able to save an awful lot of time and hassle. And then finally, we don't just want feedback from our customers, nor the experts. It's good to test it with your nan or your mum, and call this the wisdom of ignorance test. So go along to your nan or your mum and just try and explain what you're selling. And if they look confused, you might not be saying what you're selling simply enough. So you probably got to go away back to the drawing board if they look a bit confused, and make sure you're saying it in a dead simple way. So, for example, at the moment, the tagline for the Big Apricot is "Get Chosen," and it's gone through a number of iterations, but it's all about the science of getting chosen, why customers choose one brand over another. And I feel that's dead simple, and it seems to have got an awful lot of good feedback so far. So that's why we use that tagline. Now that's the end of the product route. We've talked about the customer route, the product route, and then there's a third and final route called the brand route. Now this is the final route to keep your business stable, and before you go charging off and selling your business, you really need to establish this route too. Now the brand route is really all about two distinct areas. So the first area is in fact about being distinct. This is about visually distinct. So Seth Godin talks about the purple cow. You can think of Lady Gaga. These are all about creating elements and things within your business that make you unmistakably you. So, for example, when you're, so it means that when people go into a supermarket, they can see you on the shelf and quickly identify you and pick you off the shelf. And the way we do this is by creating a strong, distinct visual identity, as I said, about Lady Gaga, but also through the way you speak as well. So if anybody of you remember Innocent, for example, the brand Innocent, they've got the most distinct tone of voice, and it's an enviable one that many people have tried to copy over time. But we need to work on what makes us visually distinct, as well as what makes us tonally distinct in how we speak. And if, we also need to make ourselves different. What is the one reason that people choose us? What is the one reason that people will buy us? So once people have seen us and been attracted to us, which is what being distinct is all about, being different is in fact about trying to convince people why they've made the right decision picking you off the shelf in the first place. So being different is all about trying to convert a customer, whereas being distinct is about initial attraction. Now, there's a lot of information in there, so your heads are probably spinning, but I did promise you a good bit of detail about what the system's all about. We've talked about the customer route, the brand route, and the product route. And these three routes, all form the second part of the 5 stages I'm talking about. So we talked about water in the first stage, we talked about routes in the second stage, and now we're going to talk about the third stage, which is much more simple. The third stage, well, I don't know if you've ever put together a little jigsaw before, like maybe a 5,000 piece jigsaw. So far, you'll have had a lot of different parts of the system. So you'll have had route. We've been talking about routes. We've been talking about fuel and water, and now, just like a 5,000 word piece of jigsaw, we actually need to put them back together and order them into a way that customers can start to understand our message. And where do we do this? Often this happens on a website. Now, we order this together into a nice solid form, and we like to call this the trunk. So stage 3 is all about the trunk. And when we've got a trunk of a business, we have a place where people can come and start to trade with us. So the way the trunk splits down is into 2 distinct stages. There's the proposed stage and there's the proved stage. Now, in the proposed stage, we set about talking about exactly what are we proposing. We can start with, the problem. We can talk about what our product or service is to address that problem. We can even have a clever line as well. And then what we need to do is the second stage is we need to propose, or rather, we need to prove. We need to prove that what we're proposing in our product is in fact not just a load of waffle, but is in fact something that's highly credible. So here's where we have our case studies. We'll have talking customers. We'll have our uniqueness. We can even have the price, and we can talk about all the horrible reasons, all the risks that people have in their head for why they might not buy us, and we can address it there and then. In essence, we're not just proposing, we're making one convincing argument around why people should buy from us. So we propose and then we prove. And once we've done this, we can use our tone of voice and all the visuals, all our distinctive elements that we talked about before, and we can make sure we shape our page in terms of colour, in terms of voice, and include our logo as well, and really shape our web page. So once we've done this, we then want to move on to the 4th stage. Now, we've talked about 3 stages so far. We talked about the water phase, we talked about the roots phase, and then we talked about the middle phase, which is all about the trunk. And now the 4th stage. Well, the 4th stage is simply about how we communicate and creating a communications plan. Now that sounds a lot, But actually the communications plan is very, very important, because what this does is this gives us all our little bits of content, all our messages, all the things we want to say to customers, and it makes us organise it into a coherent manner, which is why the fourth stage is actually called fruit. It's all about the little pieces of fruit, all the seeds within the fruit, all the messages within that we want to send out, and all the content we want to plan. And what we do is we order it into a specific sequence, and we get it ready to communicate to customers. If we don't do this, it gets incredibly messy. If we don't communicate, all our communications to customers get chaotic, and customers can sense this. Instead, what customers want is one coherent, attractive message, or a number of them that happen consistently time and time again. For example, this newsletter promised happens once every 2 weeks. And this is indeed what I do. Every 2 weeks, without fail, I send a newsletter out. So on the very basic level, you must do something similar. And these newsletters are an example of fruit. So that's stage 4, which is fruit, which leads us nicely onto the final stage. Now the final stage, so this is what we've been prepping for ages. This final stage is called scatter. So just like we'd want to spread all the fruits that we have, and an apricot tree would want to spread all its fruits so the seeds can land elsewhere and grow other lovely trees, this is what we must do with our content and our messages. So we have all our fruits that scatter, and we send them out. And we send them out using things like MailChimp. We use things like maybe Facebook Ad Manager if we're doing a Facebook campaign, or we could just purely put an ad in the local paper. Whatever the medium is, we make sure that we spread all our fruits, all our messages, all our content in the right directions. And what's really important here is not only do we do this consistently, but we make the content as attractive as possible, and we create the greatest amount of reach to as many customers as we possibly can. And when this is all done, we need to make sure that it's actually worked. Have we got the attention that we needed? Have we got visitors? Have we even got sales? Do people even come to the website? Have we got likes and shares? Have we got people who've come back to buy from us again? What does our bank balance look like? And we look at what's called the soft measures, so things like awareness measures like likes, shares and comments. We look at more behaviour-based ones, which are called harder measures. That's about, we call them dwell time, or the amount of time that people spend on your website. And then we look at what we call real business measures, like what's the revenue that's landing in your bank account from all the effort you put in. And then we can get a picture week by week, month by month, year by year, and we can see what's working and what's not. So that, in essence, is the 5-stage system. And when we've reached the 5th stage, we start all over again. We go back to stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we use the learnings from stage 5 and what we've done all the way through, and then make each stage sharper and sharper again. It's a never-ending process, and it can create something wonderful. So we can end up with a business that's small, yet incredibly powerful, just like an apricot tree, even that is so small but produces lovely juicy fruits. So that is the big apricot system: the water stage, the root stage, the trunk stage, the fruit stage, and the scatter stage as well. And this is all based on the deep science of getting chosen, of why one brand gets chosen over another. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please just email me, simon@thebigapricot.com, and I'll get back to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.